Hello and welcome to another episode of In the Bottle. I'm your host, Angelica Nohra, and it is my aim to educate you on wines from all over the world and maybe get you a little bit drunk as well. We'll see what happens. But before we start, I just want to say a massive thank you to the team here at Studio 24/7 who never cease to turn up and make us look awesome. So thank you guys. Highly recommend them for all of your virtual events. And secondly, remember, this is an interactive show. You are very welcome to post any questions into the chat box and it will come up here. We'll be able to answer them for you because sometimes we forget that when we've been in the industry for so long, that things that we think is common knowledge isn't actually common. So if there's something you don't understand, please feel free to ask us to clarify it. But today, after the success a couple of weeks ago of our Burgundy show, with so many people asking for more content around Burgundy, I could not be more excited than to welcome my next guests as we talk all about Chablis. After spending 15 years in London, Sydney and Dubai in various wine roles from a sommelier to a winemaker to an importer, my friend Neil was looking for a way to put his cumulative experiences to good use. The result was a company called Franc About Wine, and his portfolio flows on from his own passions for France and Italy, and the wines are meticulously sourced from family boutique domains and award-winning cooperatives that are old and new. And when asked what the best thing about his job is, his answer is pretty simple. It's passion. He believes it's everywhere, from the vigneron to the winemaker, to the salesperson, to the sommelier, to the chef, the restaurateur, the shopkeeper, and of course, right back at you as the consumer. It's all about passion. And Neil really believes that wine is a conversation that almost everyone wants to be involved in, even if you don't know a lot about it and you just want to learn, which is why it was what I hope you get from today. So without further ado, please welcome, as we talk all about Chablis, put your virtual hands together for my friend, Neil Thompson. Hey, Neil.
Hey, how you going?
How you going?
I'm so glad to be here. I mean, of all the regions that you invited me to come and talk about, Chablis it was just the first thing I thought about. It's the kind of region that really inspired me, got me into wine, or probably got me into really serious wine importing.
What is it about it? What is it about the region of Chablis that gets you so excited?
I think it's one of the few. Everyone talks about in wine about soil and how the beautiful flavors and characteristics and complexity come into the wine. Chablis, just for me, is a great gateway to start your learning about what that's all about. That's really why it's so exciting. I mean, I think you did a couple of weeks ago, you did some story about, you did a show about the Côte d'Or, or that's almost like the pinnacle of what we might think in wine in terms of complexity and terroir. But Chablis, I like to think, is like the best way for consumers just to start to understand what that's all about. So I think it's just a good way to start.
Well, I'm excited. And we have our little map here, so you'll be able to share with people where these wines are from. But where are we going to start? Tell us what you're starting with today.
Yeah, well, I know that you like your bubbles.
Yes,
so
everyone knows I love my bubbles.
I thought we'd start off with something very unusual from the region of Chablis. So we'll just get your glass top to start off with.
Yes, okay. What are we looking at here?
So many of the people watching might have heard of a kind of very fashionable trend in the last probably 5 to 10 years in Australia called Pet Nat or Pet Nat naturel. It's actually obviously it's a French word. Yep. And basically it's kind of like a very simplistic way to make sparkling wine. So in terms of champagne, we do the primary fermentation, we make the wine, we then add some yeast and some sugar. We put the top back on if we want to talk
and lay
very
it
simply.
Down for 3 years.
Yeah, and then we lay it and we do all the beautiful riddling in the cellar.
Yeah.
And produces some incredible sparkling wine, or champagne as we should call it if it's from that region. But Pet Nat's more of a kind of, it's taken a real fun angle. It's just basically where rather than doing that secondary fermentation with the yeast, you just basically start fermenting the wine in a tank, leave a little bit of sugar left in, and you pop it in the bottle and put the cap on. So it just gives it a little bit more simplistic bubble. It's more of a fun style. And sometimes it can be, many of the Pet Nats you might see in from Australia, and that I always joke with my friends that it's a Pet Nat because it's like a child drew the actual label. It's always really fun, and pictures of pandas and pictures of Darth Vader, and it's I
always say it's the kind of, I always say that Pet Nat for me is the kind of thing that people who make beer and they want to make wine, they make Pet Nat, if that makes sense. Which is why I'm so shocked by looking at this right now, and you're gonna have to explain this. normally for me, Pet Nats are cloudy. This is not cloudy. Why?
Well, Pet Nat, in its probably essence, is about a more artisanal product in terms of the winemakers often. It's almost like a fun thing they do just to have something to drink with their friends, and then obviously it became incredibly more commercial in more recent times. So,
Okay.
But because this is made by Margot Laroche, and the Laroche family is is steeped in history in the region of Chablis, that they take it very seriously. So this being the inaugural vintage of this Pet Nat, they wanted to make sure that it was literally like sparkling Chablis.
It
Now,
looks incredible.
I must make sure that before if any diehard Chablis people are watching, that it's not actually allowed to be called Chablis. In the law, they only make one wine, which is white wine made from Chardonnay. It's really easy to remember. That's one of the great things about the Chablis region. So it's not. It's I suppose it's just a vin de France. It's almost what we call a declassified wine in wine terms. So it's just it is taken from vines from Chablis, but as it's a Pet Nat, it's not actually allowed by the appellation control of the law. So it's classified something else.
Well, cheers to this one.
Cheers.
Let's have a look at it.
Yeah.
Well, as I said, firstly, it's clear, guys, which is so not what I was expecting from a Pet Nat today. So that's awesome. But on the nose, I think what we're going to expect from all of these wines today again is going to be a lot of, I guess, apple core, like the bright, crisp apple, which is what you're getting from this straight away. Is there anything else?
Well, you don't need me here.
No. I'm just like, what else?
You're doing great.
It's going to be a hard one today because like most of these Chablis are going to have the same kind of characters, but it's all about obviously where they come from. So I think the conversation today is going to be more about the region and what the different words mean, which is exciting. But let's give it a little whirl. I'm excited.
Yeah.
So thank you for bringing bubbles.
No problem. Yeah, I think the word with Chablis, it's less about the aromatics, or let's be honest, it's less about what it smells like. When we talk about Riesling and Pinot Noir and these great varietals that smell so much, with Chablis or particularly Chardonnay, which is sometimes in this region in a cold climate, we'll come to that in a minute, but wine that doesn't have a lot of oak, it's very much about the texture in your mouth as opposed to the aromatics. So sometimes people can think, it's a bit boring, but no, it's all about wait till you actually get it in your mouth and taste. It's delicious.
It's definitely not boring. This is like, I love that the soft bubble. Like it's so elegant, isn't it? Like it's got such a soft bubble. This is definitely a party. Like this is a party bottle. Like this is something you could sit on the back porch and drink this. Hey, but it's bone dry. Is it Brut Nature? Is it?
That's important for everyone watching to also realise that with Pet Nat, if you go to a wine store and you want to pick one up, often it's not. Let's not use the word sweet, but it's got fruit to it. It's really enjoyable. Whereas again, because this family is steeped in history from Chablis, they wanted to make it bone dry. And as you already pointed out, that word Brut Nature, that means there's zero sugar, so that they've fermented to complete dryness. So it literally is like drinking a Chablis with bubbles. So, and that's kind of cool.
Sounds like a plan. What would something like this sell for though? Like being a Pet Nat?
Anywhere between $55 and $65 in a wine store.
Yeah, so it's significant. What's the production levels of this like?
Oh, I think actually they only produced somewhere around 500 cases this year.
Oh, wow.
So it's small.
Wow, but that's great value then for that small production.
I think it's Margot, who's the beautiful and very talented daughter of Michel Laroche. I think she did it out of just a kind of that she spends most of her time living in Paris, even though her family, she always tells me that she loves Chablis, but living in Chablis at the weekdays is a pretty quiet place to be, especially in winter. So she lives up with her cheese-making boyfriend in Paris, and of course they're surrounded by some of the great wine bars, and she loves Pet Nat. So it was more of a very much a label who loved this vintage, and we'll see if they expand the production further down the line.
Well, I'm really excited because this just shows off a different level of Pet Nat. I think a lot of the Australians out there are trying that really cloudy Pet Nat, and I think it really does turn a lot of people off, having that cloudiness or that kind of yeast that's still sitting in the bottle. This is a fantastic place for people if you are looking to understand Pet Nat from the European perspective. You've just got to pick up a bottle of something like this, Margot Laroche Pet Nat 821. Love that. Thanks for sharing that one.
You're welcome.
But now we're going to move to still wines, aren't we?
Okay.
All right. What do we got? What's our first? Where are we heading to first? Remember, guys, if we have any questions, please feel free to pop them up into the chat box, and we will try our best to answer them.
Well, I've been told not to be too whiny or by you.
Whiny, Neil, you're always whiny.
I know, you have to hold me back. So one of the important things, as you know, in Chablis is that, and in fact in Burgundy, as you would have viewed a couple of weeks ago, is that we have classifications. There's laws from these regions that determine either the quality or how much we pick. So the first level of quality in Chablis is called Petit Chablis. That's really easy to remember. Small
Chablis.
So this is a Petit Chablis made by the same family we just tasted.
Oh, okay, great. The La Roche family.
Yeah. So if I could give everyone who's listening about, if you want to understand what Petit Chablis is about, it literally, Michel Laroche, the father and owner of the domain, he said, Neil, think about Petit Chablis being more like flat champagne than the Chardonnays of like Meursault and Plis de Montrachet and the richer style. So when we talk about Chardonnay, I think it immediately evokes sort of feelings of that kind of richer, buttery, rounder feel that we often enjoy in Australia. Chablis is literally on the marginal. It's in a marginal climate. It's only about 3.5 hours drive from south of Paris. It gets very, very cold in the winter time. So it's really at the border of when the Chardonnay grape can get ripe. So when you think of, you literally drive out of Chablis North, and in an hour you hit the vineyards of Champagne. And we all know how Champagne can be dry. It's delicious. It's an aperitif style product. I always think of Petit Chablis as an aperitif. I would rarely pair it towards the middle of the meal. It's something I just like to open. You can even consume it without food, but it's very much at the start. Flat champagne.
I never thought of it like that.
That
is such a good way to look at it, because I always thought if you can't afford Chablis, you drink Chablis.
No,
but it has its place as well.
It's a great point. You think, it's the poor person's Chablis, but that's not true. It literally, I feel it's a totally different category of Chablis. One of the things about that is because most of the Petit Chablis comes from, on this map here, comes from the outlying areas. So before I get too into the soil type, they're from some of the vineyards that are north facing, so they're colder. So there always tends to be a leaner, fresher, just delicious style of Chardonnay.
But has this got, this is the thing, a couple of weeks ago we talked about it. This is an oak. This nose is coming from terroir. This isn't coming from oak. How is it that vanilla character that comes through here is just brilliant? Yeah,
I think it's like a lemon. I get like a lemon sherbet kind
lemon
of
drops. That's
lemon
exactly
drops.
Lemon drop.
That's probably that's another easy thing for everyone to remember watching is that Petit Chablis. I mean, I don't want to stake all my reputation on it, but I can tell you 98% of Petit Chablis that you ever find won't be oaked at all. It'll be unoaked.
I can't believe when you taste it. This is what shocks me. When you smell that, you would swear there's oak. It's unreal.
Oak Chardonnay from most other parts of the world is extremely boring. Okay?
Yeah, I agree.
If you see oak Chardonnay, unoaked Chardonnay had a bit of a kind of thing about 10 years ago. I like Chardonnay, but I don't want it to be too oak, so I'll have an unoaked Chardonnay. The problem with that is that really all the flavour and all the expression for Chablis comes from a soil, and we can't replicate that soil
here
in many other places in the world, just purely by geographical science.
What's the soil type? What is it? Is it alluvial? Is it
how long have we got?
Okay.
But I'll keep it really really simple, and that's what's so great is that Chablis used to be under the water 180 million years ago. Okay, it's called the Paris Basin, and what happened was just during ice ages, what was a very warm sea had lots of vertebrae, and you could imagine mussels and oysters, and what happened was that sea then became under the ground, and obviously we know when those sea animals, when they die and decompose, they create what we call chalk.
Yes.
Millions of years go on by, ice ages, that gets compacted. So the best thing I can imagine, you've maybe seen those beautiful drone pictures of the cliffs of Dover when you come, all those Game of Thrones things, and that is basically the soil type in Chablis. It's basically chalk. The actual technical name for it was called Chimeridian. Sorry,
Chimeridian soil. That's right. That's
So it's named after.
I remember this from my lessons.
There you go. It's actually named after a town in England, in the south of England. So the south part of England, Champagne, Chablis, and a very special area in Loire, they all share this same soil type. So the common question is, well, if it was on the bottom of the ocean, how come we can walk into vineyards now and see it? Well, that's just tectonic plate shifting, and breaking up, and then forcing the soil that was, that would be hundreds of meters down up to the surface. So when we walk in Chablis and the vineyards just behind us, it literally looks like a white clay soil.
Beautiful.
And that is where those vines are sucking that beautiful flavor from. Literally their roots are embedded in this beautiful limestone. So that's what gives it this minerality, this kind of, people say, what's minerality? But it's that beautiful, savory.
But it's also that pumice stony kind of flavor on the
Yeah.
It's good. I hope you guys can hear the passion that does come through with Neil. Like, this guy lives Chablis. Like, he lives it. So as I said, I couldn't think of anyone better to do this with. So Petit Chablis, what kind of pricing would people be wanting to pay for something like this?
This one is about $50. You can find other affordable Petit Chablis as well, but Chablis used to be extremely affordable, but no, because of the demand of the region around the world, it's no longer the case. So, and I always say that if you kind of seeing a Petit Chablis that's sort of $25, maybe save for a more special occasion and buy one a bit more expensive. So.
Well, we always believe in that anyway. Drink less, but drink better.
Yeah,
correct?
I think so.
That's it. That is beautiful. Again, super complex. You've got all that. You got all that lemon characters. You got beautiful rock melon characters.
Yeah.
But loads of it freaks me out, like that real vanilla-y kind of character that finishes off. But I think it's more of that sherbet, like that lolly kind of thing that comes through. That is really stunning. Really stunning. Lovely. I could definitely just sit here. I don't want to spit these. Like, you just sit here like this. This feels like a Friday night party for me. I love it. Awesome. All right, cool. Where are we going to next?
Well,
again, if there's any questions, don't hesitate. Oh, here we go. When new French oak is used, it is used predominantly in Premiere Crew and Grand Crus. Oh, okay. Thank you, Lee. As tempering and harmonizing practice, not as a flavor development. Does Neil think that oak has a place in the wine?
Oh, in Chablis? So this is a great, was it Lee?
Lee, yeah.
Lee, great question, because for many years there was a contentious issue in Chablis of whether true Chablis should have oak in it. And I think this has been mirrored in Bordeaux, Barbaresco, in the Super Tuscans, all around the world in the wine, where in the mid 90s to the mid 2000s is the winemakers realized by using more oak that the wine was more palatable for the consumer. Oak always gives a richness and a kind of a suppleness to wine that makes it more accessible to everyone, from really wine passionate people, but more to the larger masses. So what's happened, the same in Barbaresco, and is that now it seems that people are tempering back the oak use because they feel it gets in the way of what we just talked about, that word terroir that's the first terroir use, by the way. It's the first time I've used that word.
I noticed
10
that.
minutes not using the word terroir.
I noticed you didn't use the word terroir.
For those of you, just again, terroir is that French word that means sense of place. So you would know that, and it's really it's not a direct translation, but it's really about the best suited grape varietal for that soil, for the climate, for the topography. So just to get back to that, I feel that there is most Premiere Crew and Grand Cru now in Chablis will have some element of oak. For example, the Montmartre that I'll just do while I'm talking, it's about 10% new oak, but it's really, I think it's just a seasoning. Barrels were always supposed to be like the salt and pepper for a chef. It's seasoning. It gives oxidation to soften the wine during the aging process, but not to completely overpower, particularly in a region that's a delicate expression of Chardonnay. We're very cold. It's light, elegant style of wine. So.
Whenever they bring the Caravan out, it's a good wine that we're about to try. That actually brings me to understanding, because you just mentioned a very key word, and that's Premiere Crew. Can we talk about cru levels for a second?
Absolutely.
What does cru level? So you can tell me, this is Gérard Duplessis, I believe, Domaine Gérard Duplessis. So this is their Premiere Crew 2017 Chablis. Tell me about what Premiere Crew means.
Okay, so we've actually skipped one classification level. We had Petit Chablis, which we talked about, which is always unoaked from the exterior of Chablis, the one that you see just because there's the most produced in terms of volume. Then we have what we call Village Chablis. Just to everyone make sure they know, Chablis is actually the name of the place. To make sure it's a village, it's the name of the place. Before we get ahead of ourselves, and then so you've got Village Chablis, and obviously Village Chablis is usually from vineyards a bit closer to either the village itself, which ironically is where the best sours are, also the best exposition. So I always find that where we had unoaked Petit Chablis. When you go into Chablis, sometimes there can be a different winemakers use different techniques, and there could be some older oak. In this instance, there's no oak at all. So,
Okay.
Sorry, if I was presenting a Chablis, forgive me.
Yeah. This is 10%. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is Premiere Crew. So I don't know if we're on the map, you can kind of see, but all those different colours. But very quickly, the Premiere Crews are the colours that are kind of like an orange, like a light orange colour. You've got yellow, which is the village Chablis, and then the kind of what you might call like light orange. Yeah. That's the name of the Premiere Crew, and there's 40 different named vineyards for Premiere Crew, and that means they either have a combination usually of better soil and better exposition, so being
to the sun
on
slopes.
Yeah, you're exactly right. We are in a very, as we said, marginal climate, so exposition to the south part is really important.
Yeah.
In
otherwise
Chablis.
they can't ripen, right?
Exactly right. Yeah, exactly right. So yeah, Premiere Crew is 40 different, and this is where we start to get some oak use. So this wine, for example, has been, we use the word élevage, but the aging time is between 12 and 18 months in oak, but just a small amount of new oak. It's only, as I said, for seasoning. So Gérard Duplessis is one of the few producers in Chablis that's certified organic.
Oh, okay.
And that's a topic that most people would like to talk about, organic wine.
Yeah, okay. The only one in this region that's certified.
It's just one of a few.
One of a few, because I know that I think Lee's on there, but shows like organic too, which is awesome.
Yeah, that's right.
I didn't realize. You'd think that they're all organic. Like for me, I feel that this region doesn't need, because of the age of the vines and everything. Would they need all the herbicides, pesticides, all that kind of thing? I mean, you can talk to how old these vineyards are if you wanted to, really.
Yeah, I mean, Duplessis are very, very lucky. I mean, they founded their domain in 1895.
1895.
Yeah. So, and Lilian, the winemaker, who's currently he's a son of Gérard Duplessis, the current generation. He's so lucky because they're all his own vineyards. So he's using vineyards that are up to 80 years old for this plot.
Wow.
And what's so great, what I learned about last year when I was there during a heat wave, is that we've had heat waves in Chablis for 2018 and 2019. The older the vines, the easier they deal with change. It's a bit like people, I guess. Yeah. They just, as they get older, or maybe that's not right. Actually.
No, the older they get, the
maybe they don't deal with change. I think I probably mean that they've seen a lot of vintages, and they're not so surprised. Maybe is a better way of putting it. So old vines, and these obviously they've been in the same plot in Montmartre, this Premiere Crew. That's their biggest vineyard holding. So, but
I'm freaking out by the nose on this. It is awesome. You're getting so much herbaceousness in this.
I always think that herbaceousness, people get scared. They go, they're thinking
Tell
of
me
like
what you would use
Meroxypyre. They think about things that are underripe, but I love a little bit of, you talk about that kind of apple core, and I think maybe it's a wine thing, but I don't always want to see fruit in the wine at all times. Actually, the excitement comes from when you see other things just except, nectarine and peach and those kind of flavor profiles. So.
That's what it is too. It's the nut. It's the seed of the apricot or something, like a seed of stone fruit. Yeah,
you see a lot of the apple core seed, which is sometimes like the phenolic. It doesn't mean it's phenolically right, but that's not the case in 17. But it's just a little I use that word. I'm gonna like a little sousson, like a little dabble or something.
It smells really delicious.
If anyone hasn't had a Premiere Crew Chablis before, please make a point this year to go out and find one. From a really good reputable producer. It's just, especially those of you who are thinking, I don't really like Chardonnay. I'm not really into Chardonnay. It's too rich.
That breaks my heart when people say
that.
Then
then maybe the first step back for you for liking Chardonnay is get into Chablis, because it's a lighter style of Chardonnay, a little bit of oak. It's got beautiful acidity because it's being a colder climate. So, yeah.
This is so. I just can't believe how I feel like we've just stepped up another level when we've moved over to this. You've got that beautiful, there's like a greenness to it, there's a pithiness to it, there's minerality to it, there's fruit to it. It's just super complex, lovely acid. This is really nice, but so round in the mouth. It's just so, it just feels like it fills the entire mouth up. Yeah. That is really delicious. What would people, if they're sitting down, it's a special occasion, we're going to buy a Premiere Crew, what would you be eating? What would you recommend that they eat? What would be...
Absolutely. Well, I mean, the cliche is always to talk about oysters, because obviously we think about, they describe the vineyards of Chablis, or the vines are sitting in oysters, because literally, you walk through the vineyard and it's just so chalky. It's so that saltiness that we think about, that salinity.
Salinity.
So oysters is always a really classic, but
For
because
those
it
who don't
has
eat oysters.
yeah, because it has such good acid, it has naturally such high acid because it's a colder climate style of Chardonnay. Things like scallops, because we often have scallops with butter sauce.
Yes.
So
So anything buttery, the acid will cut through
exactly
the butter.
right.
Yeah,
So
beautiful.
beurre blanc sauces that have
Yes.
that lemon cream based sauces are wonderful. Like mussels are beautiful. Probably not with. I tell you one thing it doesn't do well with is probably too much spice.
Yeah.
One
Stay
thing that
away
we
from
know
spice,
with spice makes wine naturally taste drier, and so because Chablis is bone dry and it's crisp and it's that style, I think you find that the spice is not so great with it. But
Well, that's delicious. The other thing I'm getting from this is floral. It's got these beautiful floral characters, and that's what was freaking me out at the beginning. It wasn't herbaceous. Not a bad freak out, by the way. Like a really good, like it was amazing. Beautiful floral characters coming through. This is awesome. What are people paying for something like this, a Premiere Crew Chablis?
Anywhere from, I think about like 120, 130. Yep. You can find ones that are probably a little bit more affordable, but from really good produce, like Gérard du Bassis, I'm very lucky. We basically, when we bring it into Australia, we normally sell out on allocation to every restaurant. So, in fact, the Le Clos we're going to have later, that's actually the first bottle, I'm not joking, that I've actually physically opened myself, because we sell it on complete allocation. And the only reason we got it today is because one of the other bottles was corked. So when you picked me up to Cayman,
you meant to say, because Angelica, you're really special, and I wanted you to.
That's right.
I wanted you to try some Grand Cru today.
I had for you to try the Grand Crus Chablis.
That is why we're doing this. Yeah. Okay, don't listen to him.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Let's move on. Any questions? Please let us know. What do you both like about Chablis compared to other world Chardonnay? I mean, Laura, thank you so much for the question. For me, as Neil mentioned, it is that complexity that comes from not having oak, where you're actually forced. You taste this beautiful minerality. You taste, just different characters. Like you can really taste where it comes from, the terroir. I just didn't want to say that word, but you do. You really taste the terroir. What do you prefer? Why do you like Chablis compared to other world? I actually also love the fact that you're drinking history. Like to me, you're drinking history when you're drinking Chablis.
Yeah, I find that when I show people Chablis, they. Even if they've never tried it before, it's that kind of wow moment. They just, is this really Chardonnay? I'm confused, and I always enjoy that part of it. And it's very simple for them to understand when you explain that that this soil type's so unique. Oh, now I understand that kind of why they wouldn't use much oak. I love Chardonnays from all over the world, as we all do. Like
I love Chardonnay in general.
From the richest styles to this style. So in terms of that question, it's really I find there's an elegance to this with that little bit of oak that I just always find it just seems to call to me. I find as I dare say get older, I find that I look for wines with a little bit that are drier and probably a bit and looking more of the lighter to elegant styles and the richer styles. I might want to have one or maybe three bottles, or with dinner with friends, and I just find if I have some of the richer styles of Chardonnay, a good potentially for going with the actual food. But I kind of found out maybe well, that's not true. If it was Montrachet, I'd drunk it all night. But
I feel like you're being very humble when you say it. It's like he's like trying to say the right thing. It's like if I drink too much of it, I'm going to make myself sick. Whereas normally with this stuff, it's not softer and lighter. Too much oak is not good for anyone.
Okay.
Too much oak is not good for anyone. You know that. Oak tannins do not help you sleep. Let's face it.
I mean, I suppose. But I also import a producer called Lucy Lamont, who is famous for his notoriety is the fact he uses 100% new oak. And for many of you, again, you're like, oh no, 100% new oak. It's only if the grapes can actually handle it and the right toasting. So I'm not saying I don't like oak, and in the right hands, it can be a wonderful part of the winemaking process. So,
but for Chablis, and as again, the other good thing about Chablis is that if someone isn't into Chardonnay, we can introduce them to Chablis and they will get into Chardonnay. Like we can show that not all Chardonnay is created equal, and hopefully it's a stepping stone. But okay, what are we doing now? Domaine d'Henri, thank you for that question. Le Domaine d'Henri, Chablis, Premiere Crew. Okay, tell me about Domaine d'Henri.
So we just moved across the river. So on the first side, the actual region of Chablis is divided by the Serene River, and now we're really moving into the iconic Premiere Crus and Grand Cru area of Chablis, which is on the eastern side of the river.
Smells amazing.
And this is from a Premiere Cru called Forchaume.
Okay.
Now we have to taking back to time before for internet and video blogs. If depending on where you lived in the wine region was really where you would be buying or tending your vines. So the actual family of Domaine Henri, they come from the top in a small village called Meligny at the top.
Okay.
Now Meligny is just next to the very famous Premiere Crew of Forchaume. So naturally they have, because it was they weren't driving there at the time, naturally they have a larger holding in Forchaume versus some of the more famous Grand Cru further down south. What makes you want to know why I wanted to show you this wine today? I almost when I show people this wine, I don't even actually say it's Chablis. Like, and the guys who help me on the road to sell these wines, my sales team, we often try to show this wine blind to people because they'll say, "Oh wow, that's a very expensive Chablis," but I always try and sell this wine as just a great what we call white Burgundy, which is probably just the general catchphrase for any Chardonnay from Burgundy. I mean, if you want to know what's special about this wine, and you referenced before about drinking history, well, these vines were planted in 1937.
Wow.
And for those of you who are keen on your history, that was obviously just before the occupation of France during the Second World War. So, a very challenging time for everyone living there, of course, and for those vines to survive, stay in the family, and for us to be now enjoying an incredibly good glass of Chardonnay from that, it's pretty special. So these are probably about 80 years old, these vines now.
But that's incredible. Like during the occupation, they don't get damaged, they don't get destroyed. That's what did they do? Like border them up or something? Like that's crazy.
There's a great book that I'd encourage everyone to read. It's not a boring wine book. It's not like lots of maps, and it's called I think it's called the War on Wine or something similar. And basically it tells these beautiful stories of families during wartime that were basically, they were blocking up their cellars to hide the wines from the occupation and try and find ways to retain their family heritage. I mean, in Alsace, it was interesting where a mother would have to send her two sons. One went to fight for the French army and one went to fight for the German army. And they were still making wine in Alsace. So it's incredible, really interesting book.
The War on Wine?
I think it's called The War on Wine.
I have to look it up. That sounds really good.
We need to have someone like Joe Rogan who has like a Google and they just
they can Google, exactly. Need Joe Rogan. We should organise that, guys.
Yeah, can we organise that?
Awesome.
I think it's called The Word of Wine.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
Straight away for me, this is, even though it's Premiere Crew and everything, this is where Terroir comes into this, because this smells incredibly different to the previous one. Like this is, wow, it's blowing my head. It could be age as well though. We're 2 years older, so it's probably gone into that more tertiary characters and stuff. But my goodness, I haven't even tried it yet.
I find this wine is classic Chablis in that or a premium aged Chablis is where you smell it and you think, there's some more richer aromas. You said that there's like apricot and there is some vanilla because this does have some oak treatment. But then you kind of think, this is just like a Chardonnay I would taste from the Mornington Peninsula or from the Yarra Valley, and then you swallow it and you're like, oh wow, there's so much acid. I mean, this wine's now in its fifth, sixth year, and it's so fresh. So it's just absolutely.
I'm still.
Yeah, it's like mouth puckering.
After 30, 40 seconds, that's crazy.
Yeah.
This is so beautiful. But there's something else too. I can't even explain it. Where do people even buy wines like this? Are these even available in like a store for people to?
Again, we'll have this wine in some of the great wine stores around around Sydney and around Melbourne. You can say your own if you want. No, I'm not going to. I promise. I'm very lucky to have two wine shops that we own in Sydney, but you can find them at one point if you Google me, I'm sure.
It's called Le Pont. You're welcome to go there.
Called Le Pont. Yeah.
Yep.
But yeah. So it is a very we would bring only a small amount of this product. It as wine importers, and I'm sure you can contest to this, is that sometimes we buy wines half for the love of it and half for the actual business side of it.
Oh yeah.
And this wine, for example, I think we collectively at Franc About Wine drink more of this ourselves than we probably sell, just because we love it. It's not always commercially viable, but I just think it's such a beautiful wine. I bring it a lot for when people come over, just to show them like the real pinnacle of what I think that you can do with old vines from Chablis, or just to showcase Chardonnay.
Old vines, so just the acidity that's coming out of it, but the rock, like the fresh melons that are coming from this as well, still. So something like this could lay down for How many, like, what would, if someone were to sell us something like this?
Oh, that's a good question. So I would say most Premiere Crew Chablis, really you can age up to 10 years. Grand Cru potentially a bit longer, but it's all, I mean, it's a cliche, but it's a preference. I don't drink my Burgundies really old. I'm not, I might be English, but I don't come from some sort of, you know, private school where my parents had some ridiculously huge Bordeaux cellar. You know, my mum was drinking Jacob's Creek, you know, as so many English housewives were in the 80s and 90s,
Yeah,
you know.
okay.
So you know, I haven't really developed a taste for very old, you know, old Chardonnay, old Pinot.
Yeah.
So I think that I like to taste mine within the 10 years of Premiere Crew, and then obviously, yeah, with Village Chablis can age, but really I'd like to draw it in the first few years, like 4 or 5 years.
But I'm a bit the same, and a lot of people ask me, like, on this show, how long can you age something? I believe that what you put into your body is what you get out of your body as well. So I prefer to put young wine into my body than old wine. I know that sounds ridiculous, but having that fresh acidity, having, I don't know, like just all that beautiful fruit and all that, like that's what I want to be trying. And the complexity of this already does not need any more age. You know what I mean? Like that is a beautiful, like that is beautiful. I think I might have one of those in my cellar actually.
Oh.
Yeah, I might have a couple of those from your Burgundy tasting that we had that time.
Yeah.
I did go a bit nuts that day. This is why I shouldn't drink and then go shopping with Neil. But now I'm really excited. This is the secret one that you definitely brought just for me, not because something was corked, right?
That's right.
So this is
well, and everyone at home that unfortunately won't at the moment get a chance to taste a
because
Grand
this is
Cru
the
Chablis.
yeah, this is the last of it.
Yeah, this literally is the last bottle that I.
Wow, I'm so
I mean,
privileged.
when we talk about Grand Cru now, so there's 7 Grand Crus,
Yes,
and
I'm
again,
excited.
they're in the dark orange on this right hand side here. And of the Grand Cru, I mean, maybe I'll get some hate mail, but really, like Le Clos is arguably the greatest expression of that particular of the Grand Cru of Chablis.
Is Le Clos a town or is
No, it's just literally it's a named vineyard. So like we talked about with the Premiere Crew, so like the Premiere Crew Montmartre, that's that village. That's
okay, because that's the thing. Actually, for some people playing at home with Chablis, it's actually the vineyards that are classified, not the house.
Sorry, yeah, that's quite right.
So that's actually something for people playing at home. When we talk about the region, the actual vineyard is what gets Premiere Crew and Grand Cru status.
That's absolutely right. Yeah, that's I should have mentioned that versus Bordeaux. So yeah, Le Clos is a plot, and of course there are lots of different winemakers or vignerons that own parts of Le Clos. Some people have a larger holding than others. I said poor Gerard Dubuissis because it's not that they're really rich. These are Gerard Dubuissis. They're quite humble people.
So where
it's not Bordeaux.
So
Le Clos is here, just by the village.
Okay.
Did you get that? Just one there.
Yeah. You can see it. Awesome.
To give you an idea, they own.
That's
I mean,
great.
they own 0.3 of a hectare. So they own 1% of the entire of Le Clos. And to put it in context of more of a how many bottles that mean? Well, literally, I will get 36 bottles of each of Le Clos each year. That's what I get. So we're one of 36.
So we're trying this?
Yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay. We have to take a moment.
Yeah.
Cheers. Thank
Cheers.
you.
And yeah, so
Wow.
it's just, and the only reason I have this bottle, ironically, was because obviously during the challenging times of the last few months, one of the restaurants that we were selling this wine to, they said, oh, can
Give it back.
you take back the allocation just until, and obviously this was the one bottle they got, and yeah,
You decided to drink it.
when I was thinking, I felt so bad because we'd organised this great tasting, and
Yeah.
one of them was cork. So
Well, I'm very grateful. That smells incredible. It's again, you've got all that beautiful apple and rock melon and stuff coming up, but it's another level. Like there's like something I say it and it sounds bad, but it's like this powderiness that comes
good.
through. It smells so good. It's like
I
this.
shouldn't say it because my wine. It sounds really like.
No,
really like,
dude,
but
we only import
great.
what we love. I'd say as an importer, you wouldn't import it if you didn't love it. You know, like passion is everything. But this smells amazing. But do you know what I mean when I say that like powderiness? There's like a really cool like talcum, like musk stick kind of, you know, like that really nice.
Not like potpourri, but I know what you mean.
It's this. I always get really caught up because I find with Chablis they're so complex that I don't have the words for what the characters are. And is there oak? There is oak in there?
Yeah, so actually the oak treatment isn't any different to the Premiere Crew we saw before from Gerard Dubuissis. So it's aged, again, between 12 and 18 months, and of that is 10% new oak. So it's just, but Le Clos is the one vineyard that you could really, it's known actually for you're not supposed to drink it young because it needs a bit of time. And in other vintages, I've opened up the wine when it's first arrived, and it's just been what we call in a wine snobby kind of geek term is closed down. The wine's not, it's not very aromatic, but this vintage is looking like already like 17 is a very interesting vintage because they had the worst frost in 50 years.
Wow!
It was absolutely devastating for the town of Chablis. Like some of the people lost up to 90% of their vineyards. So 17 was a very small production, very high quality, but very small. So again, if you're out there in shops and you see 17 Chablis, like if I see from other producers, I would definitely buy
because
17.
Obviously, and the reason for that is that when stuff like that happens, there is less yield, which means higher quality for those at home.
Usually, absolutely right.
Usually, unless they destroy the entire vineyard with bush taint or bushfire taint. Sorry. The complexity on that is ridiculous. The acidity is still so vibrant, but it's much more rounded, super creamy. It's delicious. I'm not spitting that at all.
I've just broken my dry July because.
Oh goodness! Well, you made it 8 days. Look, you made it 8 days.
Yeah, I'm not going to. I can't.
Listen, dry July is bad for the industry. Okay, stop it. We've already been in hard times.
But it's been a very, as people at home, I'm sure will be agree with me. It's been quite a liquid few months. So
trying to sober up a little bit. Sorry, just to come back to this. Sorry, this is insane. Like the finish. We sit there talking for like a minute, and it's still you can still taste it. The minerality. Something you were talking about before, it just really comes through, like that salinity, all that fruit. Oh my God. This is a moment. Guys, if you find yourself some Grand Cru Le Clos, that I guess doesn't matter what producer if you find it, but what are we talking, so I'm scared to ask what we're talking price-wise on this.
This is why I've always loved Chablis also, because they're the top wines. I mean, that this will be $230 a bottle. Now, you might be like, that is a lot of money for a bottle of wine, but when you go south and you hit the regions you were talking about 2 weeks ago, which is where arguably the greatest Chardonnays in the world come from. So we talk about Chassagne-Montrachet, Pliny-Montrachet, Meursault. I mean, there's not really seems to be a ceiling in price. The demand for those wines is so high that to pay for a Grand Cru vineyard, a Grand Cru from there, you're looking at probably double the price potentially of what that is. So you can get one of the best producers in the region from an amazing plot, old vine, from Chablis, and drink the best you can at $200, or you want to go south and it gets a bit silly. It's a wine, they're very expensive. So,
well, that is such a treat. I'm so grateful. I want to see if anyone there, are there any questions? Because to be honest, I just want to go and drink this now.
I was hoping for some really.
What is Neil's favourite Premiere Crew and Grand Cru Climat?
Climat, yeah.
Really fascinated to see what he thinks.
In Chablis or?
I'm assuming Chablis.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that's easy, and I would definitely tell everyone as well that there's one Premiere Cru that is probably above all the most sought after, and it's called Monty D'antonia, and it's just also, it literally, as you would not be surprised to hear, it sits right next to Le Clos, the Grand Cru, this one here, and it's just supposed to have, it has the soil, it has the highest concentration, at least this is what I'm told, of this Climerigian clay. It just has this incredible aging potential, and obviously you can buy a Monty D'antonia Premiere Cru at a relatively reasonable price, and it will age and possibly be just as good as paying for. Just off air, we were talking about how, can you tell the difference between 130 and 500?
And 500, yeah.
Like if you never want to buy a Grand Cru Chablis because you're like, I'm never going to spend $250 on a bottle of wine, I totally understand. I would encourage you to say that if you don't want to buy a Grand Cru, find a bottle of Monty D'antonia Premiere Cru from a good producer, and it's incredible. So Monty D'antonia is very special, and then probably also Fourchaume, which is which is also a very famous spot. So that probably in terms of Premiere Cru, and to be honest, in Grand Cru I've had a few. In fact, I've been lucky to have a few. I always kind of go back to the Clos because it really is the one that it has the longest aging potential, and it's the most. It's not always like the most charming when it's young. It actually needs a bit of time, and I know that we all want to drink things really early, but I kind of like that the Clos a bit, it kind of tells you what to do. It's like, no, I'm not ready, like you have to wait. And so I think Le Clos is exciting for me.
Awesome, thank you. Thank you for the question. And what is the pick of the wines from your stable for drinking now? Thank you, Mark. Is this out of these ones or in general? I'm thinking he means out of these. What would be the one to drink now?
Well, apart from the Pet Nat, of course. Look, the Petit Chablis it's always been designed in I mean,
now, yeah.
even okay. There's two very famous producers that kind of define Chablis, being Ravenot and Davosat. There's two producers. They do different styles, but like if you ever hear those names thrown around at dinner parties and people, they're kind of really Instagrammable wines. Those two producers, and they're wonderful. They may say, "Oh, you should age our Petit Chablis," but to be honest, most producers would say, "Look, when it's released, you could probably enjoy that. It would age, but you can enjoy it straight away." So Petit Chablis for today, you can definitely like enjoy and love it now. And then really, I mean, the Montmartre, you could open it. Like it'd probably be lovely in a couple more years, but it would be delicious now.
Awesome.
But and the other ones, I think the Clos and the Forchaume Heritage with the old vines, you can see that's 2015. Well, you were saying you think you think
age it.
You think it's great now. So
I drink because I like drinking that wine like now at that level, but you could definitely age it. That acidity is ridiculous. Like you could age that for another 10 years and I reckon the acidity would still be there, but I think it would just soften out, like get a little bit more creamy. I like it. That was good. Great question. Thank you, Mark. Well, I feel like we have opened up an entire can of worms in today's episode because now I just want to go and I want to go to Chablis and I want to feel the soil and I want to try all the different places. So I want to thank you so much for coming in.
So welcome. Well, I have something for you.
Oh, really?
Also
like
for everyone out there, because
cute.
a few years ago, like a friend of mine who's like, "Oh, you're so obsessed with Chablis," and we kind of were drinking at a bar, and he's like, he actually made a verb. I think it might be a verb, right? About oh, it's about, and so we have this thing at the Franc About Wine called like, do you even Chablis?
Do you even Chablis?
And so we used the hashtag usually when we probably had too many bottles of Chablis, and so I had to give you a edition.
Oh,
of
yay!
your,
Thank you so much. I will definitely wear this. Do you even? Yes, I do Chablis. I do Chablis.
Right.
Thank you. And I'm learning more and more. Oh wow, you got the thing on the front. There you go. I can work for you now. I mean, way more fun than working for myself. I love that. Thank you so much, guys. Thank you, Neil.
You're so welcome.
Oh, so happy that you came in today.
No problem at all. Thanks for everyone for listening, and I hope you enjoy something about Chablis, and get out there and buy some bottles. It's a beautiful region. So.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And thank you to everyone at home for tuning in. I do hope you learnt a lot today. We are, as always, going to put together a little 3-pack of a few of these wines, obviously the ones that are available right now, to purchase at a later date. If you want to know anything else about Neil, you can go on Instagram. He's never there, but you can kind of check it out at Not Just Frank, and also check out Franc About Wine, FRANC About Wine, on Instagram. Find out more about what they do. A lot of these wines are available at their stores as well, which is called Le Pont in the north side of Sydney. So do check that out. Next week, we're having a little bit of a break. We won't be here next week, but please join me the week after where we have another guest coming onto the show. Once again, thank you so much for the team here at Studio 24/7. If you have any questions, pop them into the chat box and I'll be there very shortly. Thanks again. We'll see you soon.